Finley Boden was born in England on February 15, 2020, to parents Stephen Boden and Shannon Marsden. Stephen and Shannon met in 2017 when Shannon was 17 years old and Stephen was 25. The young family lived in Old Whittington, a village in the borough of Chesterfield in Derbyshire. Baby Finley was still mostly bald, with small tufts of blonde hair beginning to poke through, and bright blue expressive eyes. According to Amanda O'Rourke, who was Finley's court-appointed guardian for a period of time, the little boy was a smiler who liked to blow raspberries. At the time of our story, he was only 10 months old.
From the very beginning, 30-year-old Stephen and 22-year-old Shannon were on social services radar. Shannon notified the agency that she was 20 weeks pregnant in September of 2019. Child welfare became involved in their lives due to the concerns over substance use, family violence, and due to the fact that they were living in squalor. Stephen cared more about spending money on weed than caring for his new baby. In fact, Stephen first started regularly smoking at 9 years old. Shannon began drinking at age 9 and smoking regularly by age 10. Although weed is legal in many US states, it is still prohibited in the UK as of the date of this recording. Stephen was also known to have an extremely violent temper, often punching holes in doors in the drywall. He had 22 previous convictions, some of which were for theft and family violence. According to neighbors that knew the couple, they were prone to having violent arguments that would often turn physical. As the world was neck deep in the pandemic at the time, social services were concerned about a newborn and a young woman being locked down with a volatile man. Due to these circumstances, Finley Boden was taken into custody 3 days after his birth and remained in care for the first 9 months of his life. According to King's Counsel prosecutor Mary Pryor, Finley was fit and well, safe and happy during the time away from his parents. However, Stephen and Shannon requested to have custody of their son, and that request was quickly granted by the family court system. In fact, they ordered his return within 8 weeks, and despite one of the reasons that occasioned Finley's removal, there was no order put in place mandating that his parents submit to regular testing for substance use. The court, who held a hearing over the phone, found that the couple did not, in their words, pose such a risk to their son that the situation was not manageable or required him to be placed out of their care in the foreseeable future. Stephen and Shannon completely fooled social services, convincing them that they were making real changes in their lives. They even redid his whole bedroom, except they had no concrete plans to change and actually take care of their little boy. We'll be back in just 1 minute. Please stick around for the following ad. It not only supports the channel, but it also supports charities in our area. This week's episode has been sponsored by CyberGhost VPN. With over 38 million users worldwide, CyberGhost is one of the most trusted VPN providers on the market. They boast a near-perfect rating on Trustpilot with over 20,000 users rating it excellent, and for a good reason. Think incognito mode protects your privacy? Well, think again. Your internet provider, workplace, school, home Wi-Fi, and even the websites you visit can still track everything you do online. And this is where CyberGhost VPN comes in. It encrypts your internet traffic and reroutes it through secure servers in 100 plus countries, ensuring complete privacy and security. No one, not hackers, not your ISP, not even CyberGhost itself can see what you do online. But that's not all. With CyberGhost, you can access 40 plus streaming platforms, including Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney Plus, and enjoy content from different countries in just a few clicks. CyberGhost works on all devices and operating systems and lets you protect up to 7 devices at once. Perfect for sharing with friends and family. One subscription, total protection. CyberGhost has an exclusive deal just for Misery Machine listeners. Click the link in the description to grab an 84% discount and 4 months free. Plus, with a 45-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 customer support, you can try it completely risk-free. Don't wait. Click the link, download CyberGhost VPN, and start protecting your digital life today. Thanks, and back to the episode.
Baby Finley should have been enjoying his very first Christmas with his parents, but that's not what happens. On December 23, 2020, Stephen texted his dealer and told him, "I want to bounce him off the walls." He was referring to Finley. In the days leading up to the holiday, Stephen and Shannon canceled Finley's health visitor appointment and told social service workers that the baby had a virus and that they couldn't see him when they dropped in unannounced. At 2:27 a.m. on Christmas morning 2020, a 999 call was placed from the family's Old Whittington home to report that little Finley was unresponsive. The 10-month-old was whisked away to the hospital, where first responders worked feverishly to revive him. Sadly, there was nothing anyone could do, and Finley Boden was pronounced dead at 3:45 a.m., just an hour and 18 minutes later. He'd only been in the care of his parents for a total of 39 days. While still at the hospital, Stephen told Shannon that he planned to sell Finley's stroller on eBay, but when called out on this statement later, claims he only said it in an effort to lighten the mood.
Finley's death was immediately deemed suspicious. At autopsy, the medical examiner found 71 bruises on his tiny body, as well as 2 burns that were alleged to be from a cigarette lighter. In addition, Finley had 57 broken bones, including to his pelvis, shoulder, ankle, and ribs. In fact, his pelvis was broken in 2 separate places, and it was thought that he had sustained these injuries from a grown adult kicking or stomping on him. The medical examiner likened Finley's injuries to that of a baby that had been dropped out of a multi-story building. According to Detective Inspector Paul Bullock of the Derbyshire Police, the violence that Finley sustained was both incomprehensible and amongst the worst I've seen in my 27-year policing career. According to reports, Finley was no longer able to sit up and play with his toys. He was unable to feed himself, and his daily experience was one of considerable pain, distress, and suffering. In addition, Finley's frail state made him susceptible to infections, including pneumonia and sepsis. Toxicology reports also found THC in the 10-month-old system, which means that Stephen and Shannon would have been actively smoking around him in the days leading up to his death. Stephen Boden and Shannon Marsden were promptly arrested and charged with their son's murder. At their trial, Justice Amanda Tipples had harsh words for the couple and painted the pair as both persuasive and accomplished liars who denied their son the medical care that could have saved his life. She also noted the plethora of injuries that little Finley suffered could only have been inflicted by the couple working in consort. Justice Tipples added, "No one heard Finley cry or scream in pain because you inflicted the injuries on him together, with one of you fracturing his bones and the other keeping him quiet with your hand over his mouth." According to King's Counsel prosecutor Mary Pryor, the defendants knew they were causing serious harm to Finley and persisted with it. They were indifferent to it. She told the court how the 10-month-old was forced to sleep in bedding stained with his own blood and vomit.
After a trial that lasted 5 months that included testimony that baby Finley essentially had broken every bone in his body, the jury, many of whom were in tears, found both Stephen and Shannon guilty on all counts. Justice Amanda Tipples, who was also emotional, sentenced them accordingly.
Stephen Boden and Shannon Marsden, I must sentence you both for murder. The only sentence I can pass on you is one of life imprisonment. It is, in any event, the proper sentence for your crime. I also have to set the minimum term that you must serve before the parole board can consider you for release. That minimum term will reflect your overall criminality. The minimum term in your case, Stephen Boden, will be 29 years. From that you must have deducted the number of days you have already spent in custody, which I'm told is 519 days. Please can Stephen Boden be taken down. The minimum term in your case, Shannon Marsden, will be 27 years. From that you must have deducted the number of days you've already spent in custody, which I'm told is 519 days. Please can Shannon Marsden be taken down.
She went on to note that, once the injuries had been inflicted, Finley's daily experience was one of considerable pain, distress, and suffering, and that neither parent showed any remorse for what they had done. Following the sentencing, Detective Inspector Steve Shaw shared the following words from the courthouse steps.
Boden and Marsden, from the moment Finley returned to their care, throughout the trial, after conviction, and even at sentence, have never taken responsibility for their actions. They lied and obstructed professionals who were attempting to see Finley to establish that he was being cared for in the correct manner. They refused because they knew that once a professional saw the state of the home and the condition that Finley was in, he would have been taken from their care. They conspired between them to ensure that no professional would see Finley and keep their awful crimes a secret. But we now know the truth. and they have paid the price with their liberty. I hope that for Finley's wider family, today will bring a degree of closure.
He also went on to state that we have seen a mother and a father jailed for what is quite simply an incomprehensible crime. They knew that they were responsible for those injuries, and instead of doing the right thing and taking Finley to get urgent medical care, they took him shopping in Chesterfield Town Center as though nothing was wrong. In actual fact, Finley was dying. In the wake of Finley's death, there were a lot of questions that needed answering. For example, social services was already involved in the family's life long before Finley was even born. So how did things turn out so horribly?
So by summer of 2020, pandemic restrictions had started to ease to the point where Stephen and Shannon wanted visitation with their son and began working with a social worker named Lynn Williams to help facilitate that. In her notes, she wrote that on warmer days, Shannon ensured that Finley was in the shade and that her holding her son's hand while he was in the stroller was a natural response from a caring parent. Ms. Williams claimed that Stephen talked to his son and made him smile. During a visit in August, she noted that the fridge and cupboards were stocked with food and the home appeared neat and tidy. The couple also claimed to have given up on smoking weed, but tests conducted months later proved that that was a lie. On October 1st, 2020, the family court ruled that Finley was eligible for family reunification and set up an 8-week plan in which the infant would be gradually reintroduced to his family. This included supervised and unsupervised visits and overnight stays, but this was all supposed to happen gradually. The family was also to undergo 12 months of supervisions and home monitoring. The family social worker actually suggested that instead of an 8-week plan, that the transition should take place over the course of 4 to 6 months due to the concerns of whether or not Stephen and Shannon could actually parent Finley. However, all of this was ignored, and on November 17th, Finley was returned to his parents' care. Just 2 days later, a social worker making a home visit noticed a 4-centimeter bump on the baby's head, which Stephen and Shannon claimed was caused by a toy. Just over a week later, on November 27th, another social worker, Emily Hollandale, observed Finley sleeping on the couch unsupervised while his parents listened to music in an upstairs bedroom. She had seen the little boy through a downstairs window as the music was so loud that the couple couldn't hear her knocking. This was the last time that anyone from social services witnessed little Finley alive. On December 23rd, just 2 days before Finley would be pronounced dead, a social worker tried to pay a visit to the home, but Stephen refused to let her inside. She also observed Shannon standing in the street about 100 or so yards away, conducting what appeared to her to be a drug deal. That same day, Finley was registered to take a pandemic-related virus test that YouTube doesn't let us say the word of, but never made it to the appointment, and Shannon was Googling symptoms of sepsis. Finally, on December 24th, Stephen and Shannon were caught on CCTV bringing Finley to multiple locations. If you quickly look at the right side of your screen, you see what is reported to be Shannon pushing Finley. This is around 2:26 p.m. You can see she is slowly pushing him down the street here. Now, a few hours later, at 7:16, here's Stephen pushing him into a Tesco Express, seemingly not really concerned about getting him proper help. They had plenty of time to do so. And while Stephen clearly looks concerned here, there's not a whole lot of urgency in getting his son help. And furthermore, why not just go to a hospital? By now, Finley would have been suffering from sepsis and an agonizing pain from all of his broken bones, but still, his parents couldn't be bothered to bring him to the emergency room before it was too late. In the end, 2 magistrates, Kathy Gallimore and Susan Burns, and a legal advisor found that the 8-week transition period, rather than the 4 to 6 month proposed transition period, was, in their words, a reasonable and proportionate length of time. In addition, the Children and Families Court Advisory Service claimed that it is not possible to say whether a longer transition plan would have prevented Finley's death. What led to his death was the ability of his parents to deceive everyone involved about their love for him and their desire to care for him. If that's not crazy enough, after reading transcripts of the family court hearings, Justice Natalie Levin claimed that the courts made a reasonable decision. She said, "Having read the papers here, I have every sympathy with the decision the magistrates made."
Toby Perkins, who is a British Labour Party politician who has served as a Member of Parliament for Chesterfield since 2010, has called for further inquiry into Derbyshire's child welfare system. In an interview with the BBC, he said, "It is legitimate to question that entire process. whether the care required for Finley Boden's safety was preserved by that process. He added that, "We remain fully engaged with the statutory legal review process, which looks in depth at the role of all agencies following the death of a child. We're really glad that Mr. Perkins is taking this seriously, because the fact that Stephen and Shannon couldn't be bothered to keep sweet Finley alive for 39 days is just unimaginable, and it makes you wonder why on earth they wanted him back in the first place."
This case draws a lot of parallels to the story of Christian Crossland, which we released on this channel back in November. In 2018, when he was about 2 years old, his mother Chelsea left him in the care of his guardians, Brittany Ballinger and Trevor Easton. The couple raised Christian as their own son up until January 8th of 2022. It was then after Chelsea gave birth to her fourth child that she wanted to get the family back together. From there, she proceeded to beat and starve Christian over the course of 74 days. And for what? The little boy had a family that loved him. Why on earth would Chelsea bring him home just to murder him?
There's no public obituary for Finley Boden, but his Find a Grave page notes that he was cremated. The only public memorial that we were able to find for this little boy was a message posted by user SSBJ on his Find a Grave page, which reads, "Murdered. Returned to parents by Child Protection Services. Precious, perfect little human being. No more pain, nor torture at the hands of family. We here love you and will protect your sweet memory."
If you'd like to learn more about Christian Crossland's story, please click here or check out the link in our description. Your internet security is important. Don't forget to click the description link to get the special discount CyberGhost VPN is granting to our listeners. They will protect your data while you browse and give you full access to all block content on the internet for only $2.03 a month. Totally risk-free, so check it out.